Welcome to The Top, the podcast that provides you with what you need to succeed in the real estate world. Brought to you by Collin County Area Realtors. Get ready to tackle top real estate topics in bite-sized amounts with CCAR President Jamuna Thill and Jana Fernandez, CCAR Chief Operating Officer.
Hello, and thanks for listening to today's special edition episode of Welcome to the Top. Today, I am joined by my dream team, my A-team, CCAR's Executive Committee, to discuss NAR proposed settlement. Before we get started, let me introduce each member of CCAR's 2024 Executive Committee so you know who's who. Jennifer Parker is your president-elect. She'll be your president next year. Kyle Paris is your secretary-treasurer this year. And our past president, our amazing Shana Acquisto, is here today. So thank you all for being here. As I mentioned earlier, this is a special episode, and we are going to go off the book. And we are here to discuss the NAR proposed settlement, and we are inviting our listeners to join in. Would you like to say something, Jennifer? We can go around.
I just want to tell you thank you for having us. Thank you for organizing this, Jamuna. I think this is a really important conversation for us to have, and I look forward to exploring this with everybody.
Thank you. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jam. I echo what Jennifer said. It's important for everybody to be discussing what's going on, have a good understanding, and have a plan moving forward. So I'm hoping that we can provide some insight to our listeners today.
Great. Thank you. Shana.
I agree, and thank you for having us. This is really nice that, calling this. I know that there's a lot of question and a lot of misinformation out there, and, just want everybody to remain calm. Remain calm. We are professionals. Everything's going to be fine. And just know that you have us as resources if you do have any questions.
That's correct. CCAR is here for you. We are here for our members. So let's get started. We want to cover some key questions. One of the first ones would be, of course, what are the key components of the proposed settlement? Jennifer, would you like to?
Absolutely. So there's actually three key components to affect the real estate industry directly, us as realtors. Number one, we will no longer be allowed to advertise the cooperative compensation in MLS. Does not mean that the cooperative compensation is going away. We simply will not be able to advertise it in MLS. Number two, there will be a requirement. While we've had the buyer representation agreements here in Texas, it has not been a requirement. It will now be required that when you are representing a buyer that you'll have to have that. And then, of course, there is the financial settlement. $418
million is going to be spread over 4 years. And we've been told that your dues will not increase.
For 24 or 25. No
Correct.
Commitment beyond that.
Correct. Did you want to say anything, Kyle, regarding the key components?
No, if I did say anything about any of that, I would just say it's just good for everybody to have their facts straight. And as everybody's out there and discussing and freaking out potentially, or remaining calm, whatever you're doing, just make sure you have the right information. And we'll go ahead and throw out, the facts.realtor is what everybody from NAR and all of our leaderships instructed us to go look at that website and get the real-time information there. So I think it's important for everybody to know that's not just them telling us just go here. That is truly where the correct information is of what limited information we do have right now as all this stuff settles.
Correct. And if you're a member, you have access to that. So, Shana, do you want to pitch in?
I think to piggyback off what Kyle said is, if you're an agent and you are concerned, go to your broker. Please don't listen and read all the headlines and freak out, because you have to understand news outlets, that's how they make their money. So there's been a lot of misinformation out there, and you need to, we have a lot of resources through NAR, through your local association, but you need to follow what your broker guidelines are and go talk to your broker.
I agree. And I think one of the biggest thing that right now is coming out of this is a lot of confusion. So it really is important to go to your broker. But also when you're working a transaction, whether you're on the buyer side or the seller side, you need to be communicating. Communication is always key. It is going to continue to be key because that is how we're going to be talking about how the cooperative compensation is going to be happening. You're going to have to communicate with the other side from the very beginning to make sure that there's an understanding, because like we've said, there's nobody saying that there cannot be cooperative compensation. It simply cannot go into MLS.
Correct.
And
Correct.
Jamuna, if I could add
Yes,
this too,
sure.
I just think it's really important too for people to be careful what you're posting out there too. If someone's not telling you this, be careful not to make a knee-jerk reaction based on something you've read or a headline, and also be careful when you're talking to your clients. They're going to ask potentially questions. We don't want to say anything that's going to scare them or create or throw fuel on the fire. Just say be careful what we're posting and take a step back before we say some things that we might not be able to get back that lives online forever.
That's a great point.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what this is about, making sure that we get the facts and the right information out there, because at the end of the day, we are trying to educate the consumer. Because there is a lot of misrepresentation out there. And once again, like Shana said, you need to go back to your broker, and the association is also here to help you. And you have lots of avenues and sites where you can go get the information, but make sure that you are sharing the right information and educate the consumer, because that's what this is all about. Also, at the end of the day, this is a great opportunity to do that. I know that we have delayed a little bit in getting this podcast to you, but, this all happened over 2 weeks. Basically, it's 2 weeks, and it created a dust storm, but we wanted to wait for the dust to settle a little bit, let everyone digest this, and then now we can talk about this and hopefully settle some of the questions that you have out there. We may not have all the answers right now because everything is still in process, but we will get there.
And what we're looking at right now, we've got pieces to a puzzle that we're still kind of putting that puzzle together, and as this works its way through the courts, it's also going to, because it still has to be approved by the courts. And so some of the information I was listening to by an attorney, a real estate attorney, he was saying that there will be people that oppose it. And so there's going to be some court transactions that are going to be happening. But at the end of the day, he feels because NAR and the other side both agree to it, it ultimately is likely to get approved. It's just that they have to go through the process. So that's why there's going to be some time. And I think as we go through the process, we're going to see how these puzzle pieces fit together, and we'll be able to see the bigger picture once it all comes together.
I think also the important thing is to think about us and our value. I mean, what consumer could truly go through this process alone? I mean, we're in demand. And someone used this analogy, I don't know who it was, but I thought it was interesting. They said, we're in demand. When something is not in demand, it becomes obsolete, like an 8-track player, a Ford Pinto, and even the DVD player, right? So people still call us and need our assistance and services. And we're in a business of constant change. It changes all the time, and we adapt. We know the latest, rules and guidelines. We follow a code of ethics. There's a million points to a contract that you have to navigate through. And if you go about that alone, you could be at risk, legally and financially. So, trust the professional, and us as professionals, know your value and understand that what we do for consumers, we're passionate about it, and it's needed.
And communicate your value so that the consumer understands that. There we go back to communication. You need to be communicating with everybody, but it's really important to communicate your value and what value you bring to the transaction.
Yeah. Change is good.
It is.
And what we will do is, what we're really good at is that we are good at adapting, and that's what we're going to do. So let's look at this change as a good thing. Hopefully, it will solidify our business and the industry, because we know we are a real estate industry, and we do create great impact on the industry as a whole. So, and real estate is obviously a huge economic advantage, and we definitely make a difference. So I wanted to cover. I know everyone's worried about this, but just to be clear, who is covered by the settlement? So if you are an NAR member, you are covered by the settlement. If you are an independent contractor of any brokerage other than Home Services of America or one of its affiliates, or you are an employee of any brokerage other than Home Services of America or one of its affiliates or one of the defendants in the settled cases. If you fall into one of these categories, then you are covered, even if your brokerage is not covered. So as long as you're a member of NAR, you are covered.
So yes, to sum it up, there have been a lot of incorrect statements about the releases in the NAR settlement, but to be clear, nearly every realtor is covered by the release that was negotiated that they negotiated in the settlement.
If anyone's unsure, then they can
Go talk to your broker.
Yes, talk to your broker.
That's what they're there for. Okay. Let's talk about the timeline for the settlement. Shana, do you want to talk about the timeline? Everyone wants to know, when is this all going to happen?
So by July is when the requirements for having a signed buyer rep agreement will be mandated, and the MLSs will have that field removed from the MLS, that you will no longer see the compensation in the MLS. About the $418 million is 4 years. So NAR will have 4 years to pay that out. And a question that I know a lot of people have asked is, do they have the money to pay it? And according to NAR, they said they will be fine. This is one of the reasons for the settlement, was that this is something that they could handle. It's not going to be easy, guys. I mean, this is a lot of money. But there's a proposed settlement, yet still needs court approval. It's over. They're giving them 4 years to pay for it, so we can continue on as a realtor association.
The settling, obviously it's very complicated, but to settle means that we can continue to do business because we have consumers out there who need our help.
And I think that's the important thing, is to know that we want to, we're the largest trade association in the world. So to have that continue is really important to all of us. So although we may not have all the answers or understandings of why the settlement came to play, it could have been catastrophic.
It could have been.
if we didn't. And I think that's the thing. We need to unite together and be, look at our profession as a whole. This affects all of us. We need to all unite together and be professional, and we'll be fine.
I agree. And when you say it could have been catastrophic, the thing that you have to remember is, even if we continued to fight and won, this would have dragged over years and years and years. And we saw all of the copycat suits coming up. The cost of litigation is astronomical. And so NAR made a financial decision to try to put an end to all of that. And they agreed to a financial amount that fit for NAR. And the ultimate thing was to help the consumers and to help all of the realtors that are out there so that we could move on and continue to help our buyers and our sellers. And, there's a lot of misinformation that we've talked about. Some of that misinformation is saying that, the housing costs are going to go down.
How are they going to go down? It's a supply and demand issue.
It's a supply and demand. And what seller, if they have to pay less, and if they end up deciding to pay less in commission, do you think they're going to pass that savings on to their buyer, or do you think they're going to want to just keep more money in their pocket? I mean, we need to be realistic. We're dealing with humans. The nature is not that they're going to sell their house for less. They are going to want to keep more money and make more money. And it's not going to magically make there be more houses on the market. It's not going to magically make the interest rates go down. And those are really the two drivers right now that we're seeing in this market, the interest rates and the lack of inventory.
Correct.
You know, but and I think all this, though, I mean, it's just an opportunity for us as practitioners and professionals to sharpen our skills, to become better communicators. I mean, we're always going to have to adjust to market conditions, to the things that we can't control. And I think it's just important for all of us to take a look at this and go, this is an opportunity for me to either establish new policies or establish a better procedure with the way I treat my clients and I interact with the other realtors out there. You know, we all have to adapt to it, because this is happening no matter whether or not independently, individually, we like it or love it or think it's silly or whatnot. I mean, our opinions aren't going to change this freight train that's already in motion. We just have to be sure that we are all ready and willing to work together and be prepared to move forward as an industry. And, you know, I think, again, it just goes back to understanding a lot of this stuff, which, you know, even admittedly myself, I'm still trying to work through all those details. But I mean,
But I love
important.
that, Kyle. And I think with any challenge, there's always opportunity. And, you know, we'll take this as an opportunity to do just that, sharpen our skills and be better for our clients. So,
And change is inevitable. And when there have been changes to our profession, we've not always embraced it. One of the podcasts that I was listening to made reference to when it was made that you had to have seller's disclosure. Before 1995, there was no seller's disclosure. And apparently, I mean, I was just getting my license, so I can't really say that I remember that happening, because I think I only operated under you had to have seller's disclosure. But the people that were practitioners at the time, that was like something new, and they were like in an uproar. Can you imagine now if we didn't have seller's disclosure? I mean, I feel like in 10 years, even maybe in 5 years, we're going to be like, why would we not have operated this way? You know, we're going to change and we're going to adapt, and we're all going to be okay.
In a year and a half, everything will kind of settle into place, and
it'll be for the better.
I mean, our clients need us more than ever right now, almost, the way I kind of look at it. You know, they're just way more confused than we are with what's going on. So we need to be that calming person, and just, it's a good time to reach out to your clients.
It'll be a clear and definitive process. Moving forward, the train has left the station, basically, and we know changes are going to come. But end of the day, it was all about protecting the consumer, right?
Absolutely.
And I feel like we've always
We as agents and brokers have always protected our
always
clients
protected
and
the
consumers.
consumer.
We're not going to change that.
That's the whole reason for representation. So we're just going to make it a little clearer. I think agents out there know their value. They know their value proposition. They work hard. They take care of their clients. They know how to fill out those forms. They know all the documents that need to go together to form a contract based on the type of transactions. And I think it's just that we get so busy. We've never really talked about our value proposition. We know what it is. So what this is going to do is help us
they call those
formulate
secret
that.
agents, right?
Yes, exactly.
If they don't know what you do for a living, then you're a secret agent. We shouldn't be that. And we shouldn't always just post the positive things. There are so many things that happen throughout a transaction, and sometimes you go through that, and a year later, you haven't had a closing, but you've you've continued to work for a client. And those are the things that I think the majority of people don't think about or understand.
Right. It's a relationship. That's what we're doing every day. We're building relationships.
I think we need to do a better job of telling our stories. Let's not be talking about all the closings that we have and posting pictures of this is the closing and happy buyer, because there were steps along the way, stories of how we worked through things. Those are the stories that we need to be talking about. Those are the stories that we need to be telling, so that through telling our stories, we're going to show our value and help people understand it's not something we walk in, we open a door, you sign a contract, and now we're at closing.
Yeah, we don't just open a door.
Exactly.
We do a
It's
lot more
so
than
much
it's
more
just
than
one-
opening doors.
Correct. It's just one step. And if you have stories out there, real stories, you can definitely call CCAR, because we would love to hear that. And we actually have a portal for that, for real stories. So we would love to hear more. I think it's going to help everyone. So please, if you have a great story, tell us the process. And, maybe it involves a video, but we would love to hear it. And CCR has a media communications department that would totally love to hear from you all. And we will get that out there. I know this is on everyone's mind. So, does this proposed settlement mean that NAR is admitting that plaintiff's allegations are true? No. The settlement makes it clear that NAR continues to deny any wrongdoing in connection with the MLS, which is our multiple listing service, cooperative compensation model rule, which is the MLS model rule. It has always been NAR's goal to resolve this litigation in a way that would preserve consumer choice. It's always been there. And protect our members to the greatest extent possible. And we believe that this settlement achieves both those goals. And it reduces the liability nationwide for over 1 million NAR members. And local realtor associations, association-owned MLSs, and all the brokerages with an NAR member as a principal. So let's move on to the next question that you may have, which is the big question. How does the settlement affect home sellers and home buyers? Who would like to talk about that? One of those.
I don't know that this changes things dramatically. I think as a seller, if you want to expose your property to the most amount of buyers, then you want an agent to do that. They can network. They have so many resources and marketing that they can do that. You have to pay for that. You also prefer to have somebody come in that is represented so they know the proper steps. These are all liabilities that would not be good for buyers and sellers if they didn't have representation. So I think mandating the buyer rep, great. If a seller does not want to do that, then they just need to understand that maybe that doesn't give them the best opportunity to sell their home. Nobody, I mean, if we think about it, nobody expects anybody to work for free. Right? You don't go to the, think about it. If you go to the doctor and you walk in and you're having a heart attack, where do you go first? Triage. You go to triage and they get all of your information and then you move on. I think this is just going to be very, very clear who is representing who and keep things, on the up and up. So I don't think it changes that much. It just may, it's procedural for sure on our end, but I don't know that it necessarily affects, the consumer. Now, there have been talks that, well, if a buyer doesn't have the money to pay that up front, what does that do? That's a conversation. That's no different than yesterday. Yeah. We have buyer representations agreements in Texas, which I'm thankful. We're one of the few states that actually have been practicing this. And in that agreement, it identifies and breaks down specifically how they get paid. We go and we show for sale by owners. We show properties all the time that don't have representation. And we have those discussions with our clients, and they make the choice how they can do it. You can ask for concessions. You can, there's many avenues that you have to handle the compensation. But it's communicating and having the conversation.
Yeah, I hope that we won't be seeing a huge change for the consumer. I don't feel like you will, because I feel like the agents that have operated in the proper way are going to continue to operate in that way. Sellers want to get their homes sold, and they're going to understand the value of having basically two agents working for them to sell a home. They're not going to want somebody just walking up to their house with no representation and knocking on the door and saying, I don't have an agent and I'm here to see your house. because
It's a safety issue.
it is
It's a huge safety issue.
It is. And then you're going to have what my husband calls tire kickers. They just want to go look at the house. They haven't sold their house that they need to sell before they can buy. They haven't been pre-approved. So a seller understanding the difference between offering cooperative compensation or not offering it, I think that's goes back to communication again. Communicating with them to help them understand the value of offering the cooperating compensation.
I think we're going to see lending guidelines change. I think I've already heard that lenders are working on how the concessions work and maybe increasing that concession amount to help the consumer. And then just recently, NAR has gone to bat for the VA buyer. That's, they are affected. They can't come out of pocket, anything for the purchase of a home. So NAR is now why it's important to have a trade association as powerful as NAR is to go to bat for the consumer and go and show why this is so important for change and fight for it. And that's what we do. We advocate on behalf of all the consumers and property owners. And it's valuable. And a lot of people don't know that because we don't share it.
Yes,
yeah,
you're right.
because,
And
yeah.
then first-time home buyers, they could potentially really be negatively impacted by this if a seller is not offering cooperative compensation. Then our first-time home buyers are scraping to get every penny they can to buy their first home, and if they have to come up with the money to pay their buyer's representative, then it almost becomes next to impossible for them. It could delay the time that they may need more years to save their money. They may have saved for 5 years to get enough money to be able to buy their first home. Whereas, somebody that already has a home, people build wealth through home ownership. And so this is a first-time home buyer's way to begin building their wealth. And if they're left out because they can't pay buyer representation, they've never done it, so they don't know what to do. They need the buyer representation. So, I mean, that could open a lot of problems, and we could potentially see some disparate impact on, people that don't have the financial means to pay somebody to represent them. So I think it's going to be really important for us as realtors to communicate that value to the sellers so that they can understand why it's important for them to offer that compensation.
But the thing is that, end of the day, we understand there is a process to get from A to Z.
Absolutely.
And there's so much in between, contracting and all the way to closing and beyond. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's so much that happens beyond that too. And I think it's important to understand and go back to the representation because, the main concern is about the buyer representation. Absolutely. But there is your value right there. And the fact that NAR is also allowing you to take your ABR designation for free, I think is something that I think all the agents should fully utilize.
Absolutely.
There are webinars, pretty much a couple of webinars every month all the way till the end of the year. Mm-hmm. So definitely take that and I guess reset, if you like, and understand what the buyer's representation is. This is one of those things you need to talk to your broker and understand exactly what the buyer's representation means and says. I'm sure there'll be some changes to it coming up that may have to be tweaked, but definitely stay in touch, and we will try to do further podcasts as things change down the road. So to move on, I guess it's a question, what should listing brokers advise their clients about the prohibition of offers of compensation on an MLS? And I think we need to clarify this. Where do we put offers of compensation? Because we're not allowed to. That was one of the results of the settlement agreements from the settlement, was that we could not put it into the MLS anymore. Even though we believe in cooperation and cooperative services as we move forward It's always been there. And if there's one word that I can put out there, compensation has always been negotiable. That's why there's a blank field in our contracts, whether it's a listing agreement or the buyer's representation agreement. That field is blank, which tells me that it's always been negotiable, and it's always something that needed to be discussed and agreed upon before you put a number into that field and before you execute that paperwork, right? Is there something you would like to add to that? Because, how do we advise about officer compensation not being available anymore on an MLS?
So you're saying, how do you advise a buyer? I mean, it's in your buyer representation agreement, like you said. It breaks down the options, and then they have the choice of what they can and can't do when they go out and start looking for homes. But one thing I want to point out is the commercial world. In commercial real estate, they pick up the phone and call the other agent and say, what's the compensation that you're offering? So,
We're going to have to start operating a lot like in a similar way. I know that another podcast that I heard said the restriction is you cannot advertise it in the MLS. Correct. It doesn't mean you can't put it somewhere else. In your own website, as long as it's not linked to the MLS on your own personal properties. He said you can even wear a T-shirt or put a billboard up. It just can't be in the MLS.
Right. I think that's the biggest bullet point. It's like you just cannot put it in the MLS anymore. But you can put it anywhere else you want. You can put a billboard on top of your car and put it there, and put it on a T-shirt, like you said, Jennifer. I mean, it's just there's going to be creative ways, and there's going to be opportunities again, to communicate that. But my takeaway from all of that is just, we're not going to be able to put it in the same place we've been able to put it for years and quickly and easily be able to look. But, we all have cell phones attached to our persons at all time. And maybe I'm the only one. I don't know. But
no, you're not.
No.
As long as my communicator's working and I can get somebody on the line, then there's no problems. But then that's the catch. That's the problem. Are we going to be able to contact the listing agent?
Agents, answer your phone. On the flip side, answering your phone is so important because that means there could be a potential buyer for that property. So
I think that is a concern. Our agents on the other side picking up their phone, because we do have a TREC policy in there regarding response times. So I think this will hopefully help that move along a little faster if you want to get your property sold.
That listing of compensation was never able to be seen by the consumer. It's only been with realtors. So this is something we have to work out ourselves. This really shouldn't affect the consumer as much as we're seeing in the news media that, that it's not going to be the offer of compensation. That's not the case. It's simply the way we communicate it is going to be different.
Mm-hmm. Correct, yes. I'm sure there'll be a lot more questions going down the road, and we will stay updated with what's happening with the settlement, and there are talks about it being finally approved, hopefully, estimated once again, close to December, but I think there are some things that are going to be put into place regarding policies and changes effective in July. I can have a final say from my EC team here. Shana, what would you like to?
Just keep doing what you're doing, be a professional, and, get ahead of it. If this is what's coming down the line, then, fine-tune your practice right now and be ready.
Kyle.
I just encourage everybody to stay positive. This whole doom and gloom is not going to be beneficial to anyone. And if we can all just gather ourselves, take a breath, and digest the information, don't recirculate bad information, and don't jump to conclusions. And I think we're going to be okay. This profession has survived decades, a century now. We're going to survive even longer than that. We just have to change a few of the things, the way that we're doing things.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer?
I agree. And, if you have been a professional, if you've been really good at your job, if you've been doing things the way that you're supposed to, hardly anything's going to change for you. You're going to continue to be professional. You're going to continue to represent your clients in the best way possible. if you've been communicating with all parties, then you're not going to have any problem with this. You're going to continue to do what you do best, and you're going to follow the rules. You've always followed the rules, then it's probably not going to be a problem. I feel like probably the people that are screaming the loudest, maybe they haven't followed the rules. Maybe they haven't done things.
Education.
Education and communication
Know
are
the
going to be
facts.
key. And do the best you can to communicate your value.
Absolutely. Well said. That's exactly it. If you've been doing business the right way, you've been taking care of your clients, you've been ethical and you have integrity, and you're serving your client's interest foremost, then you'll be just fine. There will be some changes to paperwork, but I think you'll be okay. And I think there'll be a lot more information out there that will be available. And I think we will do a great job moving forward of educating the consumer and the public as to what we really do behind the scenes, and all the advocacy that has been really milestones. NAR has been around for a long time, and there's been a lot of good things that have happened that has taken care of the real estate market, and all of it at the end of the day has been to protect the consumer. We've advocated, and it's about homeowner rights and property rights, and we've done a great job with that, and we have more work to be done. So thank you once again, and you'll be okay.
Yes.
You'll be okay. So thank you so much. CCAR is your home. You can come here and get your education, tools, and resources to help you to be successful in this industry. If you're listening and you have a question we did not cover, please email us at ask@welcometothetop.com. We will compile those emails and cover them on a future episode. Thank you for hanging out with us. Don't forget to subscribe to Welcome to the Top wherever you get your podcast, and leave us a review to let us know how we're doing. Thank you for listening. CCAR is where realtors come home. Signing off, Jamuna Thill.
Special thanks to our host, Jana Fernandez and Jamuna Thill. Producer, Bree Westbury. Audio engineer, Dylan Hensley. Outreach and guest relations manager, Kendall Crawford. And podcast administrator, Sean Ossel. Tune in next time, and don't forget to enjoy your journey to the top.
The statements made by speakers in this podcast do not necessarily represent the views or position of the Collin County Association of Realtors, its leadership, or its members. This podcast is not intended to give legal, financial, medical, or other advice, but simply to provide information as a springboard to further discussion and investigation.